So let me know when you can see my screen. Can you guys see my screen? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So I know we started off from talking about power apps and the rest, and I wanted us to round up on power apps and what's it called? In Guys, let's just round up on power apps as it is. And I started talking about Canvas apps and what's it called? And model driven app. So there are some, while I'm also talking about this, I will kind of drop some materials on the group if that's okay, so that we can actually use. So what I will do, let me join with my phone so that that's where the file is. So if I drop it, I want everybody to also be carried along as well. Let me look for the link and join on my phone. Okay. So go to charts and I want to add media. Hmm. Okay, so what we are looking at now is more like what I talked about last week. Whether it's good that we are seeing it in detail because this is the core of Power Platform. So this is just the highlight. They didn't bring. I saw this online. I think LinkedIn. The person that did not add. What's it called? Did not add the portal. So if the portal is there, you would have seen similarities between the portal and the model-driven apps as well. So, but Canvas app and model-driven app are like the stark opposites. So here we have major categories. And as I explained last time, we talked about the underlying data you can use. If you're looking at the table, you'll be seeing Dataverse, majorly for model-driven app. And it also supports virtual table as well. But in Canvas app, it's like, there's a freedom for you to choose data source. There's no that restriction is there. And on virtual table, I think it's right to explain some of this, what virtual table is, so that maybe you can understand that. Maybe some of you already know what that is. So sometimes you want to, and there also a need to add virtual table most time. Sometimes you want to add an existing table, like a legacy table that you record people already have, and you want to include it in what's it called, in your model driven app. I remember model driven app uses Dataverse. So virtual table allows you now to bring in an external table, but you don't bring in that external table as a direct. You're not connecting it. You're connecting to it as like a direct data source. You connect to it, and it kind of embeds into Dataverse, but not with full functional features of Dataverse, right? So that gives you an opportunity to kind of leverage the external Dataverse while still working with external data source while still working with Dataverse. And it's very, very key. Sometimes when you might need it when the situation will arise, maybe when you have a legacy, let's say, data somewhere before you guys are now moving on to Dataverse. So if you don't have all your data in Dataverse, this is an option for you to include some of the data that you want. But Canvas app, as you can see, kind of allows so many other data sources. Now, customization, we talked about this. It's very, very limited, and you don't have much freedom doing customization for model driven app. But then Canvas app, you actually have enough of a freedom to do that. Then user experience. User experience is usually data driven for model driven app because you are pulling the whole features are coming up on your model, your data model, right? While for Canvas app, it's flexible. You can actually do it by yourself. You can design whatever you want. You can do small, you can go big, depending on how you want it. Then app logic and automation. Now, Dataverse is role-based security, like we have similar something like that in Power BI, and some of you already might have known this. And the UI and standard and navigation grid and all of those things, you can also bring in workflow. Power Automates, and what's it called? Business rules. When you're talking about both logic and automation. But in Canvas, you use Power FX, and I need to explain this further. So Power FX means you have to code more. So when some companies don't want things to be done using code because the difference is here is that code requires maintenance, right? It's not that it's heavy code, it's just minimal code. But sometimes when whoever had set up the app initially, Canvas app, has left the company, maintaining the application is a little bit expensive. But then because then there need to be continuity, you need to understand whatever the developers were thinking while they were developing it. So all of these, back and forth, especially as with maintaining Power FX with Canvas app, you don't find it with Model Driven app because everything is just, as it's out of the box. Now for security and access, yeah, I mentioned this before. Dataverse uses role level security and the record level security for access and control. And I've talked about this. I touched at it earlier, but I will still go into it because security is very, very key, especially as it concerns Dataverse. And for Canvas app, security is basically data source permission, and you can actually design by yourself. For example, if you are pulling in data and you want only one department to see it, I once built what's it called, a HR application, just as we are seeing now. Okay, a very good example, the HR onboarding. So for HR onboarding, if you're setting up an application like this, you would want some certain features and some certain controls to be given to the HR because it's the application. You want them to have a layer of control over what can be done and what cannot be done. So being able to do that, it's an easy thing, but then you need to understand that it's the way it works in Canvas app, it's quite different. We're going to see all of these things. So you need to just kind of set up a Power FX code to kind of direct, if user, I'm just kind of describing how it will look like. If user is equal to, or maybe user department is HR, you understand, then allow access, something like that. Once you have something like that and the person that's logging in is not coming from their department is not HR, you will not give them the access to whatever control you are trying to secure. So complexity and scope. Model driven app is enterprise grade application. When I talk about enterprise grade application, it handles complex stuff, a lot of complex things. Model driven app handles that very well. While Canvas app is best for specific tasks. I think that's one of the things that Microsoft
Edison,
did. Yeah.
I don't know how you are doing it, but are you not seeing anybody raising up your hand?
No, I'm not seeing. Sorry. Oh wow.
You're not using it. You're not using extended screen, are you?
No. I'm using extended screen, but I'm currently not looking at the screen. Sorry, I'm looking at. Let me move it. Don't worry.
Maybe what I suggest that if you want to speak, you should just talk so that because you might not know that you are raising up your hand. So Coco, you can.
It's okay. It's okay.
You can
I think
unmute
I've moved it now, and then you guys can see my.
Okay, you can unmute to ask your question.
I was just wondering what he was talking over, but I've seen his message on the chat.
Oh,
so okay. I'm going over it. Thank
so
you.
We've talked about this before. I just want to deep into it further before we now continue. It's just like a refresher of what we talked about last time. You understand? So if you look at the offline capabilities, it's very, very limited for model driven now, but then we have Canvas app support offline capabilities. So what we mean by offline capabilities are sometimes when people work in fields and they want to collect data in fields, sometimes there may not be maybe network activity available. So there's a feature that allows you to build an app and use it offline. Whenever you connect offline, all the data will kind of update, something like that. Canvas app supports it very well. And performance, it's all very, very, very optimized for model driven app, while performance is basically based on the data source for Canvas app. If your data source and maybe the kind of functions you use, we'll go into that. If there are some functions that you can use, and then you have what we call delegation issues. So maybe I can touch on that. I don't know how much. Whenever we are working, it can come up. So delegation is very, very key in especially when you are developing a Canvas app. So some data source can handle some kind of processes on their side before responding to Power Apps, Canvas app. So there are some features some functions that support that feature. And if you use those features, you will not be able to have issues. But when you don't use those functions, rather, you will be doing some of those computations within Canvas app, and that is where you run into issues because there are so many limitations for that. So, for example, if you want to bring in data, Canvas app allows like 2,000 records mass. So, but there's ways you can actually expand on that. In fact, if you are just setting up the app, it usually allows 500, but then you can, within the app, you can go and extend it to 2000. But that 2000 is the max, right? But what if you're working with records that are above 2000? As is very, very common. How do you handle that? So that's where, expertise comes into. There's a way you can manage handling of a record that is above that, and that's, you need to understand the delegation very, very well. And I think the last few ones are use cases and embedding and all of that. Yeah, use cases, CRM, ERP, and use case. You can use Canvas app for a lot of other things. So that's briefly, what we discussed last time. And I don't know if anybody can remember what we talked about on this part. I remember this is where we are talking about what we are on, but we didn't finish every other thing. So I just want to quickly run down these, and then we can, open up a Canvas app, and I can talk about more about the actual studio, Canvas app studio. So choice. Choice is something. This is basically, like what we know as, when you are filling a form and you have multiple options to pick from. But in Dataverse, you can actually create it as it's not an entity. You can create it as a table. It's like a mini table that you can create, and it can be used within the environment. Anybody that's working can use the same choice. Where is this choice important? Imagine you are building something in your team, somebody else is building something else in their team, in within their own space. You have a very large enterprise now, and then you are creating your own choice. Let's say, for example, a list of departments. You want people to be able to click and say, oh, they are from this department, and you have a drop down of list of departments. Now, that list of departments, even though you can, get a standard list of departments, some people might write it differently. Some things might change. So how do you standardize that if you allow people to create it differently? I can create my own list of departments, another person can create their own list of departments, and before you know it, it's difficult to, merge. You can't, be able to use it across the environment or across the enterprise. So what choice does here is that you are able to create different choices, like list of departments, or let's say users that you want to specify that you want to give access, or maybe list of shops that you guys have, or outlets that you guys have. Those can change. Let's say you have external vendors, you want to create a list of external vendors. So when you are creating, when you are filling a form and you want external vendors to select their own name or whatever applies to them, you need to be standardized. So when you create a choice and you globalize it, they call it global choice. Anybody can be able to use the same choice you created. So that way, it's the same thing across board. And another time, we might have issue with choices that, Dataverse uses the actual value is a number, which we are going to see very soon. It's not, you have the label and you have a number that is the value. So it uses the number to kind of recognize it. You recognize the value. If it's, let's say, for example, HR is the one of the list of the departments. So the label name is HR, but Power Platform does not recognize, or Dataverse does not recognize it by HR. There's an underlying number, which is usually the value of what you created. So that value is different across board. So if I'm creating HR, another person is creating HR, they are going to have different core value. So imagine you are trying to automate in maybe Power Automate, and you're trying to pull in records from Dataverse, and then you have two different ones. It will be difficult to manage. So that's where choice comes in. And you can be able to allow people to pick more than one choice, and in that case, that's when you refer to it as choices. You can most of the times it comes up and it might be very, very confusing. Now, component library. You can actually create a library. I think this is very, very important. You can actually create a library of components that you want to reuse. Like you have different, let's say a header, for example, and you want to, globalize that header. You don't want people to create multiple headers, so that when they are developing, even for yourself, not just for people. Sometimes if you are developing, you are creating designs. You understand? So, for example, a header, you create a header now. If you want to recreate that same header in the next 5 minutes, it's not going to be exactly the same thing. So that's why component library comes in. If you create some components and you add them into the library, you don't need to recreate them again and again and again. So only thing you need to do is to go back to the component library and reuse them. So it's like very, very good feature. Now, connection reference. When you talk about
component library, is not clear to me.
Okay, let me explain that again. So let me open something that we can use to explain that. It's good that questions are coming up, because we can easily, address wherever there's any confusion. I'm trying to see if there's an app that we can use. Okay. HR onboarding. This is Canvas. And then if I'm, being too fast, just, call my attention. But sometimes I can tend to be very fast. Why is this thing taking time to load?
You can lower your pace a little.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
we are still
sometimes
new to this thing completely.
I understand.
Uh,
So look at what I'm talking about. This guy is a component. See, as I'm touching on it, right? Can you see where my mouse is?
yes.
Yes. So this is a header component.
Mm-hmm.
Then after this, we're going to talk about different, components of Power Apps, different things that controls and all of that. But now, let's assume you are creating this application. Look at this application. Now, this is a component. This is the header, right? This is also a bar with maybe what's it called, a delete button and delete button is a component on its own, right? This you can consider as a component. This search bar is also a component, right? Now, if you want to recreate, if you want to maintain uniformity across whatever app, when you're building for enterprise, you want to, you need to be design conscious. That's one funny thing that some people might not be very good at designing, but that's good. It's okay. You just want to create a working solution, but having design at the back of your mind while creating a working solution is very, very key. So some companies have set standards on what rules you need to follow, guidelines you need to follow in terms of look and feel. Because if you create an app and nobody's using it, it's useless, right? So if you want to maintain uniformity across all apps, that's where component library comes in. Component library is basically, as I've created this component now, you're not going to create it within this studio. You create it within the component library and store it there. So when you want to set up this header now, you can go back and call it from the component library and use it. And you can reuse it across multiple applications. So what that does for you is that you are reducing time to build, and you're also, encouraging uniformity. You understand now? Hello,
I understand now. I
okay,
understand.
perfect. That's what I was talking about. Okay. So connection reference. Moving. I talked about solution and moving between environment. Last time we were talking about being able to move solutions from one environment to another, if you remember. So connection references, I mentioned it that day. They are basically what is making this app work. Whose connection is making this app work? You understand? So connection role and connection reference is very important. So connection role is when you are, assigning a role in terms of connection. Let's say some companies, you will see people that have highest role, and those people are people that can be able to maybe delete something. You understand? And there's a cascading, what's it called, permission in terms of who can do what. So connection role is more like, okay, you are connecting with this role because you want to be able to fire this flow or maybe build this application. So those things are references, because once you want to move the app around there, you need to be aware of them. Because if you don't, let's say for example, if you don't remove the connection reference in a particular solution and I want to move it to another environment for another person to use, it becomes a problem. Because once you get to that person might not be able to connect because they don't have my connection. Because I usually would build an app with my name. You understand? So those are very, very important for you to understand. That's why all of these things come up within this area. So you also have environment variable, which I pointed. All of them are related. Environmental variable can be like what's it called? The environmental ID. Those anything you are building always comes with the environment ID, and those are part of the variables that are part of the solution. So these things are important when you are trying to move solutions around. And we have a lot of those as well. So you can go to the usually settings of your environment, and then you have templates. So these templates, if you are preparing for maybe PL 200, this will come up, but then it's very important that so you can actually use email templates, and you can move it around as well. You can create email templates, and you can actually, when you do go into CRM, you can actually have email servers that you can I'm trying to think of situation where that is applicable now. Let's say, for example, if there is a sale, if there's a lead that is a kind of in progress, and maybe if the lead is progressing and you want somebody to send a mail automatically to the recipient, all of those things can be configured in Dataverse easily. It's just like maybe you can configure it in that, after 2 days, if this lead is still not responsive, or maybe if these status have not changed, send out an automated mail, something like that. So that's why email and email templates always come in. Now, web resource, which is very key. We might not be able to get into web resource at this stage, but it's okay that we understand it. So web resource will have how to use JavaScript to kind of make what's it called, model-driven app work smoothly. There are some certain things you want to extend in model-driven app. You don't want the out of the box. You want to do something quickly. You can use JavaScript. So JavaScript is always embedded within web resource. That's how you kind of you just have your script, add it to a web resource, and then upload. And there's a way to connect and all of those things. But a use case here will be the last time I used a what's it called, event listener, which is basically just a JavaScript function for you to be able to know when somebody clicked on, or maybe updated a column or did something within that column. So what I was trying to do is for me to, once they upload a file, I want to update a status. So that event listener is to make sure that once somebody uploads a file and there's a file existing, then inform and update a status basically. So that's what web resource can do. So we have a lot of other things that you can do within this place, and with time we can dig into it as well. So let's go over to, I'll bring up another file, and within this time, if anybody have question, please feel free to ask. I want to bring up another file so that I can discuss that with you as well. Yeah, okay. All right, so yes, control and property. This is something that comes up very often. So what we are seeing now, which I'm keeping for this time because I wanted us to look at, what we are looking at before was basically, how you can manage Dataverse and model-driven app. That's where we are coming from. But what you're looking at is Canvas App Studio. This is where you can build Canvas app. So within this place, there are a lot of features. Sometimes it might be confusing, but you just need to start using it for you to be able to know. And we'll get into usage. This is something I was working on, and we can basically use it to do whatever else we want to do. So what you're looking at now is the Power Apps Canvas Studio. And let me use a minute to talk about some of the features before I talk about what I have in mind. So here we call it tree view. This is basically for you to see, the tree view of all you are working on. For example, this is a tree view of all you are working on. This is a tree view of this app. So you see everything. You can want to open it up down to components and whatever else you've used in building. For example, if you want to find something within this app, and you just have to click here, and you see the label comes back here. So this thing is the name of this guy. So you can actually edit this thing from here and do whatever you want to do it on it from here. You can also as well do it from here as well. It depends on what you want to do. Now, this bar is very, very important. That's why I want us to talk about, the properties. First of all, you need to understand what the controls are, and then we need to talk about their properties. So, first of all, each element that you're seeing now have a lot of properties. And all those properties are very, very important. They have different use cases. Just as I'm touching this thing, this what's it called, banner or label, whatever you want to call it. It's used as a banner, an app banner. It has several properties, and you can play with it. That's what makes it what's it called, a freestyle. What's it called again? That's what makes Canvas app not too rigid. You can be able to play with it and all of that. All of these things you are seeing now, these are things you can edit within a single property, a single what's it called, item. This one is named, you will come here, it's called a label, and this is the name of the label. Now, if you want to add anything into this, your canvas, basically it's a canvas, so you're designing it, you can go here and insert it. So here you will see lots of things that you can use, and they are also grouped. These are the commonly used ones. That's why it's under popular. But aside these ones, you can see several other ones down. So it's best maybe I explain this further. So inputs are usually things that you use to input data. If you look at the drop down, you'll see that there are things that you can use to input data. That's why they call it input. You have to be very familiar with what is available here, because when you're building, you might not have time to start looking for what is possible and what is not possible. But if you're used to what you can find here, then you can determine what can work and what cannot work. Let me give you an example. So when I talked about having what's that thing again? How platform Microsoft can have Canvas app as it is in full form, but then we'll have a lesser version. So some lesser version will not have all of these things complete, right? That's one of the things that makes them less, basically. So this is what we are looking at is complete and full. So sometimes you want to use the lesser version, you should know like what is available in the lesser version basically. So within here, you see the button, test input. We'll have to get to use all of these things. You have the pen input. Pen input is if you want somebody to sign something. I once did an app where we recorded the signature. So if you use pen input, you can actually, sign just as we see in most applications. So you have drop down and you have combo boss. The difference between this drop down and combo boss is that you can select multiple items here. Why this one is a drop down too, but it's called a combo boss because you can actually select more than one items on the list. Why this one, you just have to, select only one. You have a date picker. We use date picker in Power BI, so a lot of us will know what that is. We have a list boss. We have a check boss. All these things are around the usual thing. Now we have radio, toggle, slider, basically most of the things that we already know. But the one that I want us to, focus on that is unique to Power Apps Canvas is edit form. So form comes in different display forms, display modes rather. So we have the edit, we have the display, and we have the view. So we'll also get into that. And before, let me even show you with this. So this is a form. This thing you are seeing here is a form, right? So if I click on it, you will see that it has different modes. Let me show you. Okay, this is view. Sorry. Let me show. Let's go here so you can see the display mode. So the default mode, okay, I encoded the mode. So you can even use this to, force it to respond a certain way. So here you can see that it has like different mode according to what is happening. You will see edit, you see view, and you see new. So what these things mean is that once you are interacting with a form, it's required to change, act like like an app that you're using. So when you are entering data in a form, in a regular phone app, you will notice that once you finish typing and you click send, the form refreshes into empty form. So that is what we call new. It's like a new form asking you for another data, right? But editing is when you click on whatever button that opens the form up for you to be able to edit it. So that's basically what this button is. While view is that it's displaying the data, but not allowing you to click, just as you are seeing here. This is a view mode. So if I click, you see what's happened. If I click on this edit button, which is a code under this, it allows me to edit. So within the same button, I can also send when I'm done. All of those things are configured. That's when you talk about Power FX. So here you can actually click and work on it, see the options down. So why I'm stressing on this is that these are the basic things that, if you are looking to go into Canvas app that you need to know, because you work with forms a lot, because definitely your app will need data. So this is the way you collect data, right? So that explains this display form and edit form. Now, if you want to display just data, you use display form because that does not do any other thing. It just displays data, just as the one you're seeing on screen. But the one you're seeing on screen is not a display form, it's an edit form, because an edit form have other modes. Just as I showed you now, you can actually change different modes. Edit form allows that, but display form is only to display data, and there are times that you will require that. Where you will require to use that is when maybe you are collecting data and you want, okay, sorry, you already have data, but you want anybody using the app to view the data. And this is where I can remember that I used it. I built an app for a company that want to check in movement of goods. So the people using the app is the security at the gates. So if you are driving in as a staff, your record is already in the app because we are pulling record from SharePoint of an existing what's it called, staff that are working there. So once you come, you just need to input your plate number, and once they click enter, the form displays the whole detail of the person coming in. So that kind of form do not need them to edit because that is basically data that you don't want anybody to play with. You understand that kind of a thing. So now you don't display that kind of data with edit form. You display with a display form because you don't want anybody to interact with it other than to view. So there's always use for some of these things. You just need to know which one is which. So that is it for input. We can go to display. So within display, you can have the test label. Test label is basically you want to display a test. You use test label. So test label has a different form. If you want to, it has restriction rather. You just have to write plain text. You can do your concatenation and all of that to mash up different things together, but you will not have it in bold. In the same line, some cannot be bold and some cannot be in regular display. No, if you want to achieve that kind of design and all of that, you use HTML text. It's just like a test label as well. And then you have the forms. This one is removed, so most of the time they kind of remove something and they kind of put it as duplicated. So that's for display. Anybody have any question, please? Okay, none. And then I'll go ahead and talk about layout. So layout is very, very important. Layout, most times you use gallery, and I'm using a gallery here already. So I'll just close this and show you the gallery I'm using. This is gallery, right? You can see it here. It's a gallery. So this gallery is basically sometimes to display records. So if you are pulling records of multiple, entries, let's say a list of people. In this case now, this is somebody that's coming in into this organization. Now you want to enter a form and store that record somewhere. That record is stored and then retrieved with this gallery. That's basically the work of what gallery does. And they have different types of gallery. You will need to, have a use for it. Depends on what you're doing. So you have vertical, horizontal, and horizontal gallery is where you can flip by the side. This one we're using is vertical. Then you can have flexible height gallery because some galleries are rigid. You don't just move them freely. And there's a lot of them. Then there's data table. I need to talk about this data table. Data table is basically because you want to display raw data on the screen in a grid form, just like you have in Excel, something like that. If you want to, you see how it's looking like a table here. Exactly, that's how it is. So you can actually mimic Excel. Let's say people that are using Excel a lot, but they want to move into Power Apps, you can use Canvas app to mimic the look and feel of Excel using data table. So people can enter the records and it saves. So you have what we call container. So containers are very, very important. You think now people don't build without container. So let me show you what container does. You see the layout here is a container. You see it's called sidebar container. This is also a container. This is also a container. What this container does is for you to structure your app. You need to give your app shape before you start inputting a lot of them. So you can actually layer things on top of each other. You see that this form is actually on top of a container. You understand? Or basically the container is harboring it, is kind of containing it. And what does containers do? The containers just take up shape. If anybody is in maybe web development here, they definitely know what container is. HTML. You need to build a lot of container if you're using that. HTML and CSS. So that's basically what you're seeing here. But why are we not seeing it in that raw form? Is because this is a low-code platform. So these things are already built, and we can just drag and drop and use, basically. So, but there are key elements of developments. Basically, you need to, if you want to go into development app or web or whatever you are developing, you definitely will have to understand how containers work, because being able to use them is very, very key. You need to understand dimensions and how to structure them as well. So now we'll go over to the layout, right? We'll go over to media. So in media, all of these things, you don't use all of them every time, basically. But if you want to display picture for something, for instance, you can use the image feature. So if you use image feature, it will ask you for source. So when you assign source to it, it will take up the picture from the source. So you just assume that I add this here. Let me show you. If I add it here, it's going to ask me for picture for it to be used here. Let me see if we can easily quickly do that now so that you understand how this works. So if anybody wants to ask any question, please feel free. Okay, see, it's here, right? So what I will do now is to adjust whatever is existing before here. Good. So now you see it's asking me for record. If within my record, which I'm collecting here, I'm asking for picture, I can just write a code to direct it to the picture. So it will have the picture, it will have the picture of this person. And the way I connected it, if there's another role, that same record will have all of these pictures again. You understand? Because it's a gallery. The gallery kind of allows repeated rows, basically. That's what it does. So we have so many other, barcode reader. I don't know if I talked about when I built a barcode reader last time. It was very easy. So just add barcode reader and able to scan. It might be some of the things we might build so that we can see some of the use cases. If you want video, you want audio, you want microphone, you want the user to be able to add a picture. That is very, very possible. You want to import data, you want to export data, PDF viewer. If you have a PDF file and you want the user to be able to view this PDF file, you'll be able to do that. Now, I remember correctly, this PDF viewer is not available in a custom page, which is the dumbed down version of Canvas app that you can embed on a what's it called, model-driven app. You understand? You struggle to see PDF viewer. In fact, the reason why it's not there is very obvious. It's because it's dumbed down. A lot of things might not be available. So that is that for that one. Let me close this. Icons, very, very important. You will definitely have to use icons. So just as we have used icon in our Power BI reports, to make the display instructive and very, very easy for people to use. You will definitely come across with icons. I have a lot of it. And you can actually import icons. If you don't want to use this ones here, you can import icons that you can use. But it's very good for you to use it within your application. If you're not building something that's too simplistic, you can just build and add your icons so that instead of you to just have words written everywhere, you can even just use icons where necessary, and people will understand what it means basically without even explaining too much. Shapes. Now, shapes can be used for multiple reasons. If you are doing whatever you are doing, say for example, if you want to indicate, see this star that you're seeing, or all this other shape that you're seeing, if you want to indicate that somebody has successfully completed their onboarding, you can use one of those shapes, maybe the star, the triangle, the record, add it here, and manipulate the color of the shape based on the status of this particular record. So what it will show, how it will display is that of all the records that is now showing, you see some will be red, you see some will be green, you see some will be based on the status. So you can use that to kind of manage stages. So if somebody's in stage 1, maybe you give the person black. If it's stage 2, give the person blue. If stage 3, yellow. If in final stage, green. Something like that. That's what you can use shape. One of the many things you can use shape to achieve. So you can use shapes also to achieve this thing you're looking at now. You can use shape to achieve it as well. This one is a label, but you can still use maybe a triangle or whatever, change the color and use it. Depends on what you're doing and what best works for you. So let's go over there. Charts. You can actually bring in good that we are seeing these things now. You can actually build in a report in Power Apps, and you can actually bring in a Power BI report also. That's why you see Power BI tab. If you add this Power BI tab, it gives you the control to be able to embed a Power BI to your report. So where will this be possible? Where can you have use case for this? Use case for this is example. I worked on an application for a HR in the company that they want to monitor. I've forgotten what that is called again. The whole I don't know the word. I'm missing the word now. These things that HR do, they do but yearly to kind of rate people's performance, more like a performance application, right? So all of that process is being recorded. There's interaction between the employee and their line manager throughout the year in stages. So, but if they are doing that interaction and nobody is visualizing it, it becomes a problem. And you wouldn't want to be sending people that are always using the application outside of the application to go and view what data their interaction between people and their manager. Some managers have like hundreds of people under them, so they cannot be able to start opening everybody one after the other to see what is happening. So that's where you can actually bring in. Maybe you can go and build this whole report and then bring it in Power Apps using Power BI. You can also decide to build it within Power BI using these few chat options that you have. It depends on what you want to do. So you have AI Builder. AI Builder is in kind of adding AI power into Canvas app. You can have a business card reader. You just maybe build an app where if you use this feature, you just have to maybe upload the business card and it will extract all of the information. Basically, the same thing with receipt processor, also form processor as well. Object detector. This one can be used if you are working in a warehouse and you want to calculate, maybe count what number of goods that is remaining, something like that. So you don't want to do it manually. If you train the AI to be able to identify what's recorded, you just need to carry your camera around and being able to identify them, something like that. Text recognizer also does the same thing. So there's a lot of use cases here. Then we have mixed reality. This is like when you want to do a lot of machine mixed reality thing and all of that. It's rarely used. It's something that you will rarely come across. So do anybody have questions, especially on this stage? This is very, very important before we move ahead. Okay. So no questions. And let me talk about Power Apps controls. So we have on change, we have on select, we have on visible, and we have on start. These things are the lifeline of what's it called, Power Platform. And not all you might not see all of them within one item. You might see it some, you might not see some. For example, if I click, let me show you where we can see on change and why that matters. If I click within this is like a drop down. So that means this drop down can change. So you want to be able, remember when I talked about web resource and having an event listener? In this Canvas app, you don't need that because it's like a low code platform. They don't want you to go that extreme. So they have, minimize some of these things to be able to help you to do drag and drop. So in this case, if you go here, you are going to see unchanged. See it, unchanged. So what you want to do is, if you click on this unchanged, you are now trying to tell this app what to do whenever this value here changes. You see, so for example, you want to say, oh, if this person has face 8, for example, send out a notification. It's easy. You can just put the code here for the person to for the app to listen and act accordingly. You can come here and say, oh, if this compliance is completed, which is true, if it's true, send out a message or send out anything, or do whatever you want to do. It's just more like an event listener to know what is happening. So you also have this on select. On select works is most especially within gallery. Now, this is the only item in my gallery, right? Because that's the only record we have. If we have multiple records here, you will see with time we'll enter more multiple records and you can see it. You will see that only this first one, when I click on it, it is selected. You understand? It is selected now permanently because it's the only item within the record. If you have multiple items within this record, you see there's those other items that are not selected. So when I select one record, you may want something to happen, right? So on select allows what's it called? A function that allows the app to know what needs to do when something is selected, right? The reason why this form is displaying this record is because of on select. How does this form know what record to display? It displays the one that is selected. So let me show you why or how that comes into play. You see the function here selected. Records in gallery 1 does selected. That means any selected record display. That's what it's showing. It's asking basically what item should this form display. So this is basic English. It's just for you to understand how the app Power Apps processes it, so that you'll be able to understand and work with it. So what this simple formula, Power FS formula, is saying is that if you want to show item on this form, make sure that it is item that is selected within records gallery 1. Which one is record gallery 1? You can basically see it. This is green. Record gallery 1 is also green. Look at it. So any item that is selected here, this guy, remember the item is a record already. It's coming from a database. So you just have to display it here. That's how things like that work. So that is for on select. Then on visible. What I'm taking my time to talk about these properties, guys. These are the things that defines Canvas app. You need to know these foundational features. Now, on visible, you use on visible mostly when you're talking about screens. You see, when we have new screen, you can add screens, different kind of screen. So we are working with one screen app. This app has only one screen, but we can have multiple screens, right? So when you have maybe one screen or multiple screens, you can actually go to that screen and say, oh, you want to do something whenever that screen is in display. That is on visible. That means the screen is on visible. That's, it's on display. That's what you see this here. So we have all of these other things, but these ones we can still talk about. But these are the 4 ones I talked about are, key. But these ones are also very important. Oh, sorry, I selected just what's it called? The form. See, invisible. So it's just trying to tell you that whenever this screen is on display, what do I do? Where can you use this thing? You can use this thing when you have calculations or a lot of manipulation on your screen and you want that to load only when the screen is open. Now, this is where you kind of have a tactical approach to development. Now, you don't want some functions to be running on the background because it's small load. So there are some functions that are only useful whenever the screen is open. So those kind of functions you can use on visible. You understand? To be able to work on it. So that is some of the things you want. So whenever you won't hide it, whenever the screen is on hidden, you can also put a function there for something to happen. All those things are very, very key. Then on start is the most important one. Why I say on start is the most important one is that you can do a lot of things on start. In fact, to load your data is on start. This is on start. You are saying once my data is loading, once I'm opening, I'm starting an app, do this. So a lot of people use on start to load a lot of function that has to do with record, calling the record. You understand? You can also use it to declare who you want to give permission and all of that, because that's the start of the application. So once somebody is loading the app, on start is in progress. So whatever you want to do when the app is opening, you can use on start to do that. So a lot of function you can put on start, a lot of things. But the problem with this, that's why understanding what this function does and how they work. Problem with this is that if you put a lot of things there, it slows the app from loading quickly. And there are ways to handle that as well. And we can, with time talk about all of that. You can use formula to do that. You understand? So we have a lot of things here, and we can, talk about them. On error, I think I will use this time. I finished talking about, all the four: on change, on select, on visible, on start. But these two rather are very, very key. Also, on error, on change. You can also see the one that we saw within the form when we click on the form. Because as I told you, not all items have all of these things. Some have the one that is peculiar to them. So if you go to a form, you will have on success. See, on success, on reset, on failure. What is this talking about? It's talking about the use of the form. So if after filling this form, I send it and it didn't go for whatever reason, that is on failure kicking in. So what would you want to do when a form that is being submitted fails? You can do it on failure. What would you want to do when the form is resetting? Because the form is resets once it submits. You can configure that. So if it's resetting, do you want to do something else? You want to refresh the database while it's refreshing, you can just put the PowerFS formula there to refresh the database while it's refreshing. On success is also very key. Success is very key because if you want to do anything once somebody has successfully submitted a form, that's where you do it. So it's not important, it's not very wise to do it on the button. So people put it on the button because if you put it on the button, you want the person to, once they are pressing the button, all the things will run at the same time. But what if the thing fail? What happens? That's where unsuccess comes in. Unsuccess makes sure that the form has been delivered, and that is the next stage. So you want to display to the user that the form has been successfully submitted. This is where you use it. You just come here, click on success. You see that something is already here, right? Because I want to update a contest once it's submitted. You can just come here and put a what's it called, a notification. Your what's it called, record has been successfully updated, something like that. You use on success. So we are at 10:05. Let's just reconvene and see maybe if we are going to continue or we'll end here. If there's any more question, please let us know, please, again. Does anyone have any question, please? And then what do we do next? Do you guys want us to do the extra 30 minutes or not? Hi guys, is anybody hearing me? Yes. Okay, please, Diran, what's up? What do you think?
It's all right. A lot of things to unpack. Okay, let others talk, sir. Let others. We want to.
Damola, Coco, and Benga, what do you guys think? If you want us to know this lot of information, we can, take it as we are taking it slowly.
Yeah, I think we should take it slowly because there are a lot of things to digest.
Yeah, it's too much
Yeah.
information. I usually tell people that knowing this basic is important because now if you start working and you don't know these things, imagine how confused you're going to be.
But Edis, I think there's, no matter the amount of talking that you do right now, we still not really, we still like probably forget some things until we start maybe, the hands-on, or we start practicing on our own.
Okay.
I think it's important we.
Good. I agree with you. So we can do something now. I don't mind because that's why I opened this, the canvas today. I just want to talk about everything we have here. Then we can now do hands-on. So, but one thing that is key is for us to know what all of these things does. Maybe I need to can I rush that now so that we can now go further and focus on further developing this. I can remove everything we are seeing now, and then in our next class we'll start afresh to rebuild an onboarding, employee onboarding. Is that okay by us? So that you see it coming to life.
Fine by me. Yeah.
Okay. So now I first of all talked about this 3 view, and we have seen the use case. It's just for you to see all the elements that you have within your app, and you can work on its property. That's the importance. You have first of all the screen, and from the screen you're looking at, you have you see the layers. You have the screen container. You have another. You can layer containers. It's possible, and then you can work on that. Now here is the same thing as insert. You see that this is insert. This is also insert. So you can use this button or you can use this one. Now this is what's it called? Data. Your data source. You click on it, you see data source. I'm using Dataverse here, employee onboarded. So if you want to, this is where you now use what's it called? You bring in a lot of your data. Let me show you how much data you can bring here. A lot of options. So you go to connect. First of all, it will show you your table, which is basically Dataverse. like we discussed before. But then you have connectors to other data sources, and this is where you can see them. See, you can bring in SharePoint from here, you can bring in SQL Server from here, and if you want to see all connectors, some people have a lot of legacy data sources everywhere. This is where Microsoft have this in abundance. Here you go and bring a lot of them in. You just have to search whatever you're looking for. You see it and bring them in. So these connectors are basically like API, right? Already developed for each of these platforms. You just have to click one and then you sign in, it authorizes you, and then you connect to your data source. Basically, that's what it does. Now we have these variables. Now, I understand that we might know what variables are, but then they are very, very key. In fact, you see how all of them are listed here. They have different uses. Global variables are variables that you can use everywhere. Yeah. Named formulas. Named formulas is the thing I mentioned when we're talking about onStart. If you don't want to overload your onStart, you can use named formulas. So you go there and it's more like you are creating your own function. Whatever functions you are doing there, you can use it across the app without overloading the onStart. And then you can use context variables. Context variable have lots of context variables. For the context variable, this is a context variable, update context. And this is very important, and we need to understand how it works. Context variable works in context. That's basically what the name is, what it does. So what that means is that if something is happening, based on what is happening, I want to update this. That's basically what that means. But it's different from global variable. Global variable applies everywhere. So if you want to set a user, you say you want to get the user display name, and you declare login user.display name equal to, you say name. Anywhere you put name, the login user display name will appear there. That's basically a global variable. You're using a variable to dictate all of those things. And then you have component variables. They're basically variables you use within a company, as I explained. And you have collections. So collections are when you use variables to import data. Remember when I talked about managing more than 2,000 records? You use collections for that. Collections is you can load in maybe your data source while the app is loading, or maybe you can, and once you load them, you can collect them and work with them throughout the person's interaction, the user's interaction, and hold them within a variable, so that you don't connect every time the person is clicking things. You understand? That is very, very important for you to do. So let me give you an example. When I talked about how you can maximize Power Platform and use just and not use just 2,000 records, and you want to use more than, let's say you're working in a big company that have up to, let's say, 5,000 records, for example, or more. It can be more. Now, how do you use 5,000 records within a Canvas app? It's simple. You use collections. So once the data is the app is loading, you load the entire database and hold it within a variable, and that variable is collections. So that variable, you work with that variable as a data source within the app, right? And then within, maybe once the person is submitting something or doing one action, you can now update your own data source with whatever is being held within that collection. You see how you are trying to avoid the conflict, the limitations that come with Canvas app. All of those options are there. Now search is for you to search within your Power Platform service. And then we have media. This kind of shows all the media you use in the app, Power Platform, advanced tools, and then you have settings. So within the settings, for you to look at everything that you're working with, display, you can actually change your screen sizes. You have the portrait. If you change portraits, this app will turn to a portrait form, where I'm using landscape now. It depends on what you want to do. And then you can actually bring in Copilot, select whatever Copilot in Power Apps. You can do all of that. Now, updates of what is happening. These things sometimes Power Platform are bringing in, Microsoft are bringing in new features and all of that. If you go to update, you can decide to start experimental features or the ones that are on preview, and then you can see the ones that are retired as well. So, but if you are using anything that's experimental and preview, they're not stable yet. There's a warning that Microsoft will give that, oh, these things are not stable yet. If you want to go ahead and use them, but they are not. It's not advisable to use them. That's I said, because they go through a rigorous testing phase basically. And then if you want to communicate and be able to see the details of all your app and all of that, you see them here. So there's a lot of things. Now, if you want to change, see exactly. Look at the stuff I was talking about earlier. So Power Apps allows you initial 500 records. That's it. But I can actually come here and extend it to 2,000. So even if you see, thank God that it's coming up. So this is what I was talking about. At least you can visualize it now and say, row limit. This is how much data it can bring in within, you can work with at the time, right? So this is, except you're able to bring it in within the local, what's it called, context of that app. It will be able to interact with it. But if it's stored in external data source, you are going to have problems working with 1 or 2,000 records, definitely. That's the use for that. And then there are so many things you can do with your app here. You can come here. Yeah, this is basically app settings. If you want to change the icon of your app, this is here. You want to change how all of these things can be changed. You want to change the description, the name, basically do that here. So this is on this side. This is your canvas. This is where you do your magic. Like I've talked about some of these things. Undo. This is copy and paste. Insert. If you want to add data, like a data source, edit field, background color. You can change the background color that you're using and pick anything as well. Then there are more options here, basically. And then this is to show whether you are editing the app or not. And this is the property of whatever element you picked. This, if you want comments, some people want to attach comments when they are building, if they are building alongside other people. Now you can actually check your app. Sometimes if you're building app, you see red dots coming in. It just basically means that something is wrong. So app checker allows you to be able to see that. Now you can share your app with users, but some apps would require some kind of what's it called, licensing. Some others don't require it. Now this is for you to play. You can actually preview this app in normal production view to see how it's working while you're building. Then you can save, and you can actually download a copy or save it differently. Sometimes you want to save it and use it in another environment. When we're talking about moving solutions around, you can do it. Now there is publish. Anything you are doing, if you don't publish it, basically we know this within Power BI as well. If you don't publish it, people will not be able to have access to it. So once you are adding new things, you publish. Now coming down here is more like whatever element you are selecting, all the properties we saw here, you can see it here in a visible form. You can actually play with it here, add or remove things and all of that. So this is like a brief review of what we're looking at. So I think we can stop here today, and by our next class we'll be able to redo. This is something I was working on, but I didn't finish it. We can actually finish it up, and then I can give you something similar. Maybe we can do the offboarding, right? So that you get your hands busy, and then we can take up more options that are coming up. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so we can stop here today. Hello, Mr. Benga.
Yeah, thank you, Edison.
All right. You have a question?
And congratulations on your new baby.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know how next Sunday is going to be for our class, because I'm expecting a lot of visitors.
Yeah, no pressure. You can take that day off. You don't have to be on that day.
I will see how we can do it. It's not. So do anybody have question around what we discussed? I know what we discussed today, especially on this guy, is very, very deep. In fact, this place, once you master this place, you see the other place we are coming out from, the model-driven app and all that, you can actually it won't take you much, because this place allows you to do a lot of work, to do a lot of changes and adjustment. That's where there's a lot of things everywhere. But when you go over to maybe a model-driven app, the CRM, Dynamics, those ones are heavy. I'm not going to lie to you. They're heavy, but they're easy to use, I understand. Easier to use, I understand, basically. Is Mr. Wenger, is he still on in the meeting, or has this left?
No, I think he's busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can end it here then if there's no more question.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.